Christina, thank you for joining us. Lovely to have you. Can you tell us a little bit more about yourself and how you got started?
Hi, Paula. Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here today and talk to your audience. I founded IdeaBrush about 2 years ago, and it's a digital marketing agency, sort of a boutique agency. I specialize in working with small to mid-sized businesses with a creative focus. And my specialty is guiding strategy and creating content on social media platforms. I do strategy and content for email marketing. And also, the most recent offering that I'm excited about that we're going to talk about today is social media ad strategy. So, those are some of
Yay.
the things I specialize in. And just, again, really happy to be here today and to talk to everyone.
Wonderful. So what does it mean to stop the scroll on social media then? Why is it crucial for small businesses and their ad campaigns?
Well, stopping the scroll is such a powerful thing. So, what that means is just imagine you're on a social platform and you're just scrolling away, looking at posts and videos, and all of a sudden, an advertisement, or what's also known as a promoted or sponsored post, gets your attention and you actually stop moving. And there's something about it that gets you to stop, and it just pulls your attention in. And that's really powerful because that's the first step in a business getting a potential customer to interact with their ad and to maybe even take an action.
Yeah, and I think I think it also means that our ad budgets go a lot farther, because ads are getting more and more expensive. They're not getting any cheaper, let's put it that way. And I have noticed an increase in my own ad costs. So obviously anything you can do to stop the scroll, get their attention, makes the ad more effective, and ultimately is going to produce a better ROI. So I know a lot of businesses struggle with creating attention grabbing ads. I think we all do. What are some effective strategies, or elements that we should be incorporating in our social media ads?
That is really the first stop to getting people to notice your ad. And I would say the best thing to do is to create clear, appealing visuals, because social media, most platforms that we're advertising on are heavily reliant on visuals. So having a very, very clear messaging that's not too jumbled, if you're using images and text, maybe having a healthy combination of those elements, not having too much text, not having text that's too crowded, making things easy to read. I know we'll probably talk about video a lot during this conversation, but video can be a very powerful element to getting people to stop and to engage with your ad. It's just what is hot right now, but it's also very effective. It's very engaging. I'll talk about lots of other elements during our conversation, but definitely having very consistent, clear, and high quality visuals is the best place to start.
Okay, I mean, that makes sense. I know Facebook has that rule about, like they generally want no more than 20% text, probably for just that reason. When you say high quality, I know a lot of businesses, like, we're always told to make our stuff look organic so that it's relatable. Stock images, maybe, I don't respond as well, I don't think, to stock images when I look at an ad myself. So I wouldn't think that would be an example of quality media necessarily. So
Right. Well, what I mean by that is a stock image may or may not work. I think having it, if you're going to use imagery or video, it can be stock, but if it's something that you can create yourself, or something that shows maybe something in your world, or showcases your product, or showcases something about your specific service. By quality, I also just mean the actual quality of the image or video, the professional look of it. It can look organic, but it needs to be clear. Any writing that you use in your ad needs to be clear and needs to be formatted correctly. So that's what I also mean by quality.
okay, awesome. Thanks for the clarification on that. So obviously there's a ton of content on social media platforms. We're always competing for buyers' attention. How can small businesses ensure that our ads stand out from the competition and make an impact?
Yes, there are so much noise going on there and so much competition. I always say the best place to start is really having a clearly defined goal for what you're trying to accomplish in your ad. And this seems so simple and so apart from the whole visual discussion we were just talking about, but this
Easier said than done sometimes.
yeah, but it lays the groundwork for what you're going to put in front of your audience. So really understanding what it is that you want to talk about in this ad and what goal you want to come out of it is so important. If you're not clear on that, then it's going to be difficult for the audience to connect with it and to take an action, or it's going to be difficult for it to rise above the noise and make a connection with people if it's not clear, if you're not clear on that. So that's the first step. Defining your audience well is also really important. That's a way that you can connect with people, get in front of the right people, that the ad can rise above the others when it's reaching the right audience. And the social ad platforms have an ad manager functions where you can choose your audience manually. So I recommend doing that and choosing it carefully and narrowing it to an extent that you're really focused on a specific group of people and specific characteristics. And taking some time to understand your audience helps in this process too. Maybe interacting with them on social, getting to know them, looking at your demographics and other information that you can learn about your audience through your social account can help to define this and take that step. That helps ads to rise to the top too. And again, video is also very engaging. I hate to say it, but it does help if you can include video in your ads. It can really help to grab attention and to pull people in.
Right, I agree. So, and I always say a confused buyer doesn't buy. So you always, of course you want to be clear on your messaging if you can, as far as like I know my demographics, but again, with all the changing algorithms, I've also been told that, lately things have changed with the Facebook ads. You need to go more broad with your targeting versus very specific. Like I used to put in all of the interests, exclude, certain people. And now it's like, no, you need to put the location, the age, and, let it run.
You keep it broad. Yeah, there's so many changes. That's the really interesting thing about social media and advertising is it's always changing. So, and there's a lot of experimentation involved. So yeah, that's a good point that is something that's changed recently.
So how do you recommend keeping up with these changes then? It's a pain in the ass.
It really is. We have to be vigilant. We really do. We have to stay on top of it. I don't think any of us can afford to kind of sit back and get comfortable because just this week or in the past week, there was a major change as some of your audience members and you may have heard about with Twitter changing its branding to X basically overnight. So I think the best way to keep up with changes is to find some industry leaders or an information source like a podcast, a newsletter, maybe a marketing organization that you respect. Follow them on social, listen to podcasts, read blogs. Do that, I would say, on at least a monthly basis to just check in with what's happening and what changes may have come through. I can recommend a few resources if that's something that you would like or that would be helpful to your listeners.
I think that would be great. We can put that in the show notes. They can also go ahead and follow you, I'm sure.
Okay, sure.
Yeah. You sound like a wealth of information for that too. So we were just talking about like video. I mean, nobody can deny that, video is overtaking kind of social media. So what exactly, what are some ideas that we can do to use ads at least a little bit more, or video ads or video more effectively in our ads?
Well, I've spent a lot of time researching and looking at ads just to get inspiration for work that I do for my clients and also just for research purposes. And the most compelling ads, in my opinion, the ones that have worked well for my clients are ads that, for instance, if a client has a product-based business, I think it's really helpful to feature that product as soon as possible in the ad. That helps to stop the scroll. So if it's a product that can compel people, show it right away. Don't maybe, let there be a ton of mystery around that. So showcase your product right away. If it's a service, I find that something really helpful to do with video is to include, if possible, a client or customer testimonial, showing, if possible, someone speaking about their experience working with you or experiencing what you do is really valuable. Also using user-generated content. So that's content that maybe some of your followers might be posting on their own accounts about working with you or using your product or business. That's a really great way to encourage more engagement, and it also builds your community, helps you tell an interesting story about your brand as well. So those are some tips that I've given to my clients and I found can be really effective.
So speaking
Sorry.
of storytelling in our ads, what are some examples of using like what are some good examples that maybe that we can use in our ads? So I always say, like I was saying about product-based businesses, they have it much easier. I feel like it's so much easier to show the product or show the behind the scenes of the product being made versus a service. When you're an artist and you've got, a very visual product, sometimes like painters can go and show their art, in action being made. But like, what do you do when, maybe you're just, maybe you're a videographer? How do you tell a story with that, I guess?
Yeah, that's a great question and a great point, and it is more challenging. For that circumstance, I think it can be really compelling to go behind the scenes, and this goes back to brand storytelling again. It's getting people to connect with who you are. So if you're a videographer, maybe you could tell a story about what your life is like on a typical day and incorporate some of that into the ad, seeing what like equipment you use or, the people that you're working with, to show people a little bit of the behind the scenes of your work. I think that sort of practice can help people to feel more emotionally connected with what you do because they're seeing how you work and what you work with. So that's just one example of a way to bring something visual into a process like that. That's not as easy to demonstrate as if when you have a product that you just show in the video.
All right, excellent. That's great. So what are some best practices that small businesses or that we can consider to make our ads more visually appealing?
Again, it goes back to image quality and video quality. It sounds like a tall order, but there are so many platforms out there that are really helpful that can take a lot of the work away from that process. My team and I use Canva. I'm sure a lot of your audience members are aware of that. It's great. You don't have to be a professional graphic designer or have someone on your team. So they have wonderful templates that you can use to start either like a graphic ad or a video. There's some other great video editing platforms that make things really simple and easy. Vixer is one that I like to use. So having, really compelling, visually appealing visuals and video is so important. So that's a good place to start. I would say also just being able to find ways, again, to connect with your audience on an individual level, to speak to them, understand who they are and what they're looking for can help to guide what you're producing visually. Another way to make a very effective ad is to make sure that the ad format is correct. So when you're creating your ad, when you're doing your setup process, you'll be given different options for formatting based on your ad objective. So you'll have a limited selection, and it's good to understand, which one to choose. And then also you'll have to know what dimensions, so dimensions of an image or graphic or video that you'll need to pair with that ad type. And it's really important to get those formatting features correct, because otherwise your ad might not show up properly, or it might be blurry or something like that. So it's good to have all of that in place so that people can actually see what you're producing correctly.
Yeah, that's absolutely correct. You know, if you've got a square video, it's probably not going to look as well in story format, you know, or a reel format.
That's
So,
right.
and I actually looked, you mentioned Vixer. I had never heard of it. So I was over here looking it up in the App Store. That's pretty cool. So I'm just looking to see, it says you can adjust your videos with trim and speed. Is it free or is it a paid app?
It's a paid app. It's a fairly low annual fee. I think it's maybe like 40 or 50 something dollars annually for a subscription. So it's fairly low.
And I see it has
And
music. Like you can go in
yeah,
and choose music too. So
yeah, it does have
yeah.
music. Yeah, it's pretty handy. And there are lots of other apps like that out there. That's just one that we like to use, and it's pretty easy.
Oh, cool. Yeah, I always like to discover new apps that make life easier.
Yes, yes, that's a good one. And Canva has video editing functions too, and sometimes we use that also.
I use Canva for almost everything because I'm a photographer, but I'm not I'm not a graphic designer. So, and
Right.
it's so easy to use. It's actually easier to use sometimes than Photoshop when it comes to putting elements together. So it's been great. So yeah, I do
Oh
use it for
yeah.
a little bit of video editing once in a while. I can use it, because it's really easy to crop, like this video, for example. It's really
Hmm.
easy to like crop it down and make it like and put it in a real format.
Yes. Yeah, it's such a lifesaver, such a time saver too. And it can be a lot easier to use than Photoshop. I don't even have a Photoshop account anymore. My team doesn't, because we're just using Canva. So
Well, that's awesome. Hey, it
yeah,
saves on expense. It saves on, even just keeping up with a lot of the changes or learning Photoshop. So,
that's right.
so what are some common mistakes that you see that we should be avoiding when we create our ads?
The biggest mistake I see is, this is something that people probably wouldn't expect, but not, well, again, it comes down to not having a clear goal for your ad. It seems so obvious, but I see a lot of ads as I'm scrolling through, and I can just tell that there wasn't clarity involved in the process of deciding to do this ad. So I would just take a step back and think about what it is, again, that you want out of this ad. What goal are you looking to accomplish business wise? The biggest thing I see is people not taking time to do that. Also, I don't know if this is something that a lot of your audience members have tried, but it's definitely worth it. And not doing it can really do a disservice to your ad process moving forward. It's really great to take advantage of ad testing options. So what I mean by that is testing multiple variations of an ad in one campaign. It's also called A/B testing sometimes. So most platforms now allow you to test more than one version of an ad, and you might vary one element of the ad across versions. Like you might have, the same visuals in all of your ad versions, but the captions might be slightly different, or the call to action might be slightly different, or you might vary the visuals. And in your analytics at the end of the campaign, you can see how each one performed. And that's such valuable information. I think a lot of times businesses don't take advantage of that. And it's great because you can use that data to inform your next ad campaign and really, be smarter about it. And maybe even think about who you're targeting differently. There's so much information that can come out of that you can learn. And then we talked about this earlier, but I think one pitfall is also just not having visuals that are clear. I can't emphasize that enough. I've seen ads where, the text is difficult to read, or, again, an image is not formatted correctly. I can't emphasize enough how much that can take away from an ad and from someone stopping and interacting with it.
Okay, that makes sense. So, I mean, you were talking earlier about like having a clear objective. I always say when it comes to small businesses, we're not a corporation. We don't have to advertise just for brand visibility. You actually have to have a call to action. You want them to actually take an action of some kind because that's why we're paying for the ad. We don't have these ginormous budgets usually. And then I think the other thing that you had commented on the testing. So when you test something, I always notice like don't make multiple changes. You want to test just the one thing. So if you're testing just the photo in the ad set, okay, which photo is performing the best? Or just the headline, which headline performs the best, et cetera, et cetera. Because if you make multiple changes, then you don't know why one ad did better than the other.
That's right. Thank you for emphasizing that point. That's so important you're just varying one element of the ad and not multiple things. Exactly. Because otherwise, like you said, you can't be clear on which element made one ad version more successful than the other.
Perfect. Well, I think I got a lot out of this conversation today. I really appreciate you being with us. And again, this is Christina Batipps with Idea Brush. That is ideabrush.com. And I will put that in the show notes. And I'm assuming, yeah, you've got LinkedIn, you've got Facebook if somebody wants to find you online. So again, thank you for joining us and have a wonderful rest of your day.
Thank you so much, Paula. It was so great to talk with you. I really enjoyed the conversation.
Yeah, I did too. Okay.
Yeah.